delusion, right? Then you have to kill the monsters of passion and aversion. Then what happens? You are united with peace and you live in a state of bliss in your own self. Now, the point is, how do you cross the ocean of delusion? How do you kill these monsters of passion and aversion, etc.? Because unless this is done, we are nowhere near to what we understand as that peace that passeth understanding. If you remember, one of the statements written, we have the Agastya Hall in the School of Ancient Wisdom, mentions about the peace that passeth understanding. And it abides in the heart of those who live in the eternal. Now, these are all beautiful words. But where do we get the experience of it? Just hold on, please. No, the clarity of perception that is required to see that our normal consciousness is a state of delusion. What appears to be real is not so real. What appears to be worthy of pursuing finally appears to be a waste of time. So, do we see this delusion in the sense that there is this limitation? There is this limitation which is functioning. Unless we see this limitation, in the whole process of our functioning through the senses and the mind, and also the impermanence of things. What was the most important thing in our life at one point is now a faded memory, or we ourselves feel like laughing at it, that why did I think this to be the most important thing or most important person or most important event in my life at that point of time. So one has to come face to face with this reality of the limitation of the senses and the mind and the impermanence of the objective world around us. Unless that happens, the words like crossing the ocean of delusion or going to the other shore or doing something else are all meaningless. How do you cross the ocean of delusion? There's so much of delusion. We live in delusion, we die in delusion. We have been doing this for decades, and nothing really has changed except for some cosmetic changes here and there. And that too, that they have come with age only, not through any wisdom. One has become 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 years old, and progressively the physical body is not is becoming weaker and not cooperating, and then because we have nothing much to do sitting at home, and we can't run here and there, and therefore we think that this is the time to think about God. Where is that God? Who is that God? See, as G.T. Krishnamurti says, we created God. We said he is in this form, he is like this, he is like this, and it's all an imagination. See, when you can't grasp the significance of the vastness of sky, the immensity of nature, where is the possibility of going beyond it? So we will continue to be in a state of delusion unless we are serious about it. We are terribly serious about it, and that alone matters to us, to see this, the impermanence, the constant change that is happening, and the uncertainty in which we live, and the unreality of the things. Because a thing cannot be called as real if it is not permanent. A thing cannot be called real if it is changing. A thing cannot be called real if psychologically I am dealing with it in different ways at different points of time, and nothing is really binding me as something which is real. Nothing is holding my attention to say that this is real. Is it clear to us? Is it clear to all of us or not? Is the important thing. Otherwise, this delusion is not going to go away. It's like a great ocean. You can't empty it. You can't pour it into another container. You can't do anything except crossover, in the sense that it becomes totally irrelevant to us and does not hold any attraction to us, and makes things very, very clear. So it is a matter of clarity of perception, that's all. Unless we perceive this truth, we will not be in a position to understand the nature of delusion, nor be anywhere near to eliminate its influence in our life. Similarly, there are so many passions, so many desires, so many attachments, aversions, hatred, jealousy, envy, sorrow, pain. In fact, if you see, the mind is a peculiar instrument which does not really record and sustain the happy, blissful, joyous, pleasurable moments in life. The impact or the impression of such moments is very, very superficial, very, very transitory. But when it comes to sorrow, hatred, grief, envy, jealousy, whatever name you give to those ugly feelings, they seem to be stuck with some kind of glue, some kind of a Fevicol or quick fix to our mental consciousness. They are stuck in that consciousness. And we brood over them, we think over them. We somehow want to avoid them, but they are sticking on to us. So that's why he calls them as Rakshasa here. He calls them as demons or monsters. Ragadveshadi Rakshasan Hatva. The statement may appear to be something violent, that you need to kill these monsters. But the idea behind it is that they should not rise again in us. They should never rise in us again in us. Does it happen? Is it happening in us? We may repeatedly take an oath or take a vow or determine or we try to exercise our will and say no, tomorrow onwards I should not be angry, the day after tomorrow onwards I should not be irritable, this and that, and but every day it seems to come back in some form or the other, and we blame the objective world, we blame everything outside us, and say no, this fellow should not have behaved like this. I never expected my wife to talk like this. I never expected the neighbor to behave like this. Or that fellow has instigated the whole thing. And this fellow has done something else. So we keep on blaming everything outside us and thinking that if we are on our own, we are peaceful, which is not true. Even if you are on your own, you are not peaceful. You are disturbed. You and I are in that state of disturbance. So the idea of killing is that it doesn't rise again. It does not garner any kind of life or energy on its own and rise in us again. Recently, in some other discussion, a mention was made that in one of the meetings, somebody questioned Jiddu Krishnamurti and said, "Sir, were you never angry in your life?" Then Krishnamurti said, "No, sir, it's not true. I was angry in my life. But when I saw the nature of anger completely and the consequences of it, then onwards I was never angry. It doesn't rise in me at all because I have completely, totally, with all my attention, I have seen the nature of anger and what are the consequences of anger." And therefore, that perception has made me completely free from anger. That is the transformation we are talking about. Traditionally, it has been said that greatest of the beings were also subject to this emotion of anger and greed and hatred and whatnot. Very interestingly, in the Sundarakanda, after creating so much of havoc through fire in the entire Lanka, he goes to the ocean to put out the fire on his tail, Hanuman. Then suddenly he remembers, what the hell did I do? I was terribly angry with these people and I have simply burnt the whole Lanka to ashes without even thinking of the consequences as to what might have happened to Sita Devi. Then he says very interestingly that anger is the biggest enemy of the human being. In a fit of anger, one may even go to the extent of killing elders and gurus and revered people also. And he alone is a truly saintly person who has transcended all these things, who has conquered anger. He alone can be said to be a truly great person who has conquered his anger. So you see the nature of this. So conquering, killing, overcoming, all these are words. We need not give too much of importance to the word because that may create in us a sense of aggressive and violent action on our part to uproot it. No, it is the other way around. The action that is required is a clarity of perception. if we see the nature of that emotion completely, and in the wake of that emotion, what are all the consequences? And sometimes the consequences are totally irreversible. As in the case of killing somebody. You can't say, I'm sorry. You can't revive a person who has been killed or something you have destroyed. You have damaged something, even objective things. If you have broken something in anger, can you put it together again? So that is the point to be noted, that unless these things happen and we understand the nature of delusion and the nature of the various emotions that create so much of havoc in us, you cannot think of being in a state of peace and tranquility and in a state of self-awareness or self-realization. You are in that state of consciousness where the self revels in the self alone. Atmanye Vatmana Tushtaha is a beautiful statement in the Bhagavad Gita. The self in total bliss in itself. All these things, again, I'm just trying to remind you that these are words. Yogi, Shanti Samayuktaha, Atma Ramaha. All these are words. See, as a person, do I see myself as disintegrated, as fragmented, as so many thousands of pieces? A small piece of that nonsense in me, which I think is the best part of it, comes out to talk on Atma Bodha. And my hidden desire also is to somehow create an impression in the minds of the participants and the listeners as though I am great and I know something, which is a false thing. Inside me, there are 1,000 pieces of me. You don't even know one single piece. So please don't draw any conclusions about the speaker looking at a small fragment of him. And it's not a reminder to you, it's a reminder to myself that only a small fragment is trying to pose as though it is wise and knowledgeable and capable of delivering talks and lectures, and all this is of no relevance at all. It's irrelevant unless I am integrated inside. The word yogi means one who is integrated. Samayuktaha also means being in a state of unity, oneness and unity. How does it come about? It comes about through my antahkarana and trikarana, through my thought, word, and action. Are they integrated? Are they integrated? My thoughts and words and deeds. Is there an integration in that aspect? Or do I think something and talk something and do something else? So there, it's all dissipated. All the energy is lost because there is an internal conflict, internal contradiction. And there are 1,000 pieces, as I said. And I want to take each piece and then clean it and polish it and make it nice. It doesn't happen because I can't put together all of those pieces. They are shattered, they are broken. But I am projecting something else to the world. I am projecting myself as somebody whom I am not inside. So unless we realize this and this fact hits us hard on our face, and we come to terms with that reality. Again, when Jiddu Krishnamurti says, don't justify, don't condemn, don't accept, don't reject, but see the truth of it. The moment you want to justify it or condemn it or blame it on somebody or do something else or something else, the connect is lost. You have brought something in between the two. You and that perception. If something else is coming in between, your own justification, your own mental activities, your own perceptions about other things, if they come in between, the clarity is lost. You want the inner ruler, immortal, to be really the ruler? Then you will be confronted with so many things from the worldly point of view that it's very difficult to operate. It's very difficult to do what you are doing. So it is either this or that. The mundane world and the spiritual world are mutually exclusive. You can't live in both the worlds. You can only physically live in this world. But any psychological attachment in this world and any psychological burden or baggage which you carry in this world is a great hindrance to the spiritual world. So when the masters of wisdom said, leave your world and come into our world, it is literally true that one has to leave this world. And again, the famous illustration, which is there in almost all the Indian languages and cultures, is like the drop of water on a lotus leaf. And somebody has put it beautifully when he said that a wise man is in the world, but not of the world. All these are beautiful words, but do they apply to me? They don't apply to me at all. After half an hour or 1 hour, I am back into my own activities, my own worldly affairs. My own cunning mind starts operating there. So this aspect has to be very clearly understood. Otherwise, all these statements or these verses seem to be good poetic verses. Yeah, yes, sir. Yeah, it is true. Yeah, I have to come out of delusion. Yeah, I am working on the monsters of attachment and aversion and passions and anger and hatred. Yeah, I know, sir. I know. I'm looking at it. I'm just carefully trying to examine it. This will never end. It will go on for lives and lives and lives and lives. This is a never-ending process because you and I do not have the clarity of perception. Do we hold on to something which is burning, which is hot? Will our physical body allow it to do? Can I hold a burning charcoal in my palm? Why do I drop it? Because the effect of it, the consequence of it is immediate. But unfortunately, the consequence of my irritation, my hatred, my jealousy, my anger is not immediate. And sometimes it appears that I have won over a situation through my aggression. So it reinforces saying that, yeah, one need to be very aggressive in this world, sir. If you're meek and timid and fearful and succumbing to people and succumbing to others' influences, then we are not human beings, sir. One has to have that personality. One has to have a strong sense of, self-respect. We can talk about all kinds of nonsensical things. The fact of the matter is we are not able to see the truth of it. It's as simple as that. In such a situation, Do these verses help us in any way? They can be helpful only when you recognize the truth of this. The true nature of delusion, the true nature of our passions, our emotions, how they control us, how we are their slaves. As we grow older, even small changes in our life become something which is very disturbing, very tormenting. Minor changes in our lifestyle, if somebody asks us to make, no, sir, very difficult, sir. I need to have my first thing coffee in the morning, sir, early morning coffee. Yeah. Then only other work, sir. Then somebody asks you to make some minor changes and all, no. There used to be a gentleman who used to come to my talks. Sometimes they were in the evening, around 7:30, 8 o'clock or so. But this gentleman had a very strong idea in his mind or strong habit in his mind where he has to take his food at 7:30 and go to sleep by 8 or 8:30. He'll get up at 4 o'clock, that's a different matter. He was interested in attending my talks, but he would come and tell me, sir, after 7:30, even if you give me moksha, I don't want, sir. I want my meal. I want my meal. I have to go at that time. So please don't mind. Don't think otherwise that I am walking out or something like that. But these people, I told these organizers not to extend your talks beyond 7 or 7:30, but they don't listen to me. So the best alternative is for me to go away. He was very clear about his idea. But if you are slave to a habit, if you are set in your comfort zone, that itself is an indication that we are unwilling to bring about any change in our life. When we are unable to bring about minor changes in our physical environment, how do we expect that great changes will come in the psychological domain, in the domain of consciousness? This is an interesting thing which we have to note. So the focus should be not on mere statements that having crossed over the ocean of delusion, having killed the monsters of passion and aversion, then I will become, is like talking about, suppose I am able to stand in the sky without any support. Then from there it is easy to fly, sir. How will you stand in the first place? The assumption itself is based on false premise. You're assuming that I'll stand in the sky without any support. And from once I stand there, it is easy for me to fly. But the basic premise is wrong. The basic premise has to be questioned, and that clarity of perception has to come about in these matters. Otherwise, it's going to be like this only. It's going to continue to be like this only, and nothing much is going to happen. Okay, sir. As the author here says, this is an allegorical statement of Rama, Sri Rama, from the Ramayana. Rama is addressed as Atma Rama also. So he is standing at the on this side of the ocean, and Sita is on the other side. So he has to cross over this ocean and kill all the demons and bring back his own peace of mind, which is Sita. So that's an allegorical. This thing also is referring to.
Krishnapani-ji?
Yes.
The earlier thing, can you just go back to 50? It
Yes,
says, it says that killing the monsters of passion and aversion. So there's really no killing over here. We have to outgrow it just automatically falls off.
As I said, killing, these aggressive words are used to tell us the difficulty in doing it.
Yeah, that is true. Yes.
That's number one. And the other idea is, so I said, killing means that they don't rise in us again.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not suppression or keeping them under check or control or temporarily holding on in such a way that they don't appear. No. The idea of killing here is to see that once for all, you are finished with it and they don't rise again. Yeah, that's the idea behind it.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. Any other point for discussion, sir? Or shall I go to 51? This again, I'll go to 51. These are again, as I said, the same ideas which are presented in a poetic manner. Bakhyanitya sukhasaktim Idvatma sukha nivruttaha ghatastha deepavat swastha swantareva prakashate. Relinquishing attachment to illusory external happiness. Bahya anitya sukha asakti. Asakti is not being attached to or relinquishing attachment. Bahya is external. Anitya is impermanent and illusory. Sukha is pleasure. So, relinquishing the attachment to illusory external pleasures, hitva atma sukha nivruttaha, being in a state of happiness or satisfaction in one's own self, atma sukha. And the bliss, that is the sukha, the bliss you derive out of being in one's own self. Ghatastha deepavas swasthaha. This is another typical traditional example of a lamp in a pot. Obviously, the pot has so many holes in it, so that the illumination comes out of those holes. But it's not so easy for the air to enter, the wind to enter and blow out the lamp. So a lamp in a pot is in a very stable state. It is not disturbed by the wind outside. So that is the meaning of swastha. Swastha means being established in oneself. And it illumines the inside of the pot, isn't it? It illumines the inside of the pot. So you are self-illumined within yourself. And you are in a stable state like a lamp in a pot. The lamp in a pot is also a beautiful illustration or an example that is given of one who is stable and self-illumined within himself. So nothing of the objective world is going to disturb my peace because I am totally detached from it in the sense that the external world of objects does not have any influence upon me. And I am abiding in myself as a Jivan Mukta in the self. I am satisfied in the self, which is derived from my own inner being, inner self. So that is a state again of a yogi, a person who is integrated. And the beautiful illustration that is given is that of a ghatastha deepa, a lamp in a pot. It's a very traditional example. And it beautifully conveys two aspects, two things that it refers to. One is it blows in a very steady and stable manner. The wick is burning in a very stable and undisturbed manner, and also it illumines whatever is in its domain, the inside of the pot here. The inside of the pot refers to one's own inner being. And that's how it illumines. That is the beautiful meaning of this particular verse. Yeah. Shall we discuss anything here before I go to the next verse? Anybody would like to? Yes, please.
Namaskar.
Yes, sir.
Krishna ji hits once in a while, but you are hitting in a short time like a hammer. I'm almost on the floor. And second thing is this Ragadvesha. See, the world is firing at me at the point blank range all the time.
Yeah.
And to deal with that and to make sure Ragadvesha do not take over my free will and remain in myself.
Sir, Ramchandra ji, that the world is firing at you at point blank range is also a delusion. See, who is firing at whom? It's all your imagination again.
Dualities.
So you are subject to duality. So you are in that state. So you are imagining that they are firing at you. Why is it that you are imagining that? Because you have a great sense of separation.
Yes.
You and I have a great sense of separation. Me versus the entire world, which is not me.
Yes.
But that is an illusion, no?
True.
Do we see that?
I see, but that accepting is the big problem.
What is that?
Accepting it as a truth is the big problem, sir.
No. How? See, sir. If I bring a burning iron rod and put it on your finger or your palm, is there any question of acceptance and rejection?
No, instant rejection.
Then why? So therefore, there is something wrong with the psychological domain.
True.
It is accustomed to time. It is accustomed to slow progression. It's not accustomed to direct and immediate perception.
Yes.
So you see, unless you bring that total attention to it, one will always feel that the whole world is persecuting me.
Yes.
This complex of persecution complex is to some extent in all of us in some form or the other. That I am a victim of circumstances, that I am a victim of the world, and that people are after me and I am being chased by my karma and whatnot. But this complex is something which we have created ourselves. So we have to demolish ourselves. We have to demolish it ourselves, sir.
Can surrender help?
Can?
Surrender.
Surrender to what?
Surrender to the ultimate truth.
Where is it? Where is it, sir? If you and I know the ultimate truth, we will not be here in this class. Is it not?
True.
The fact that we are here is that we don't know the ultimate truth. So how can you surrender to something which you don't know? So these are all words again. Surrender, completely giving up ourselves. So we create an object outside ourselves, put it on a pedestal. But the beauty of it is If something good is happening, I don't
Mm.
surrender. I keep taking it. Something good is happening, it's all mine. Huh?
Yes.
If
Yes.
something bad is happening, I surrender it to you. And that too, when do I surrender? Suppose somebody hits me,
Mm.
and that fellow is a very powerful fellow,
Mm.
strength-wise, and he has 10 gundas behind him and is politically connected and all that.
Mm.
Suppose he hits me, because I can't hit him, I'll surrender. But suppose the other fellow is weak and he hits me, I'll hit him hard 3 or 4 times. For every single attack, I will attack him 10 times. There I don't surrender. I exercise my. So it's all a question of the psychological me acting through its own mechanisms, mechanisms. It is trying to be very cunning, trying to be very divisive, trying to be very, smart in its own acting. When you surrender,
Yes.
it should be something total, complete, and immediate. Again,
Not
not
every day.
partial surrender,
Not every day.
not as and when required. So that is the problem, sir. That is the problem. Don't be under the impression that people are having only one major work in this world, that is to attack Commander Ramchandranji and in Bengaluru and a fellow like me in Hyderabad. No, they don't have. They are working in their own manner. We are all in the same boat. We feel persecuted. We feel as though we are caught in circumstances because we are unable to see the truth of it. Yeah, Manjula ji.
Sri Aurobindo uses always that complete surrender. All his books, whenever we
Sir,
read,
sir, we
even the
don't-
mother, they
sir,
use
we-
that word complete surrender.
That is because he may use it, but we don't understand in the same sense as he has used it. The problem is, did we ever inquire from Sri Aurobindo, what does he mean by complete surrender? What does it mean to him? Does it mean the same thing to me? It's not the same thing. For him, complete surrender means the absence of self, the absence of me. Even an iota of that me doesn't operate. I am through and through transparent. Is it the same thing for us? Unfortunately, no. The self is so cunning that when it is capable of doing something on its own, it takes all the benefits and credit for it and does everything. When it's unable to act in certain circumstances, it will say, I'm going to surrender. You can't play these games with yourself or even the so-called God outside. You can't play these games for long. You will continue to play, and we have been playing this.
Thank
We
you,
have been
sir.
at this. Yeah,
Thank
we
you.
have been at this game for a long time. You understand the point, Ramchandran ji?
Absolutely, sir. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Sir, anybody else? Anything? Any other point to be made? Or we can. We have another 5 minutes to go. Shall we go to the new verse? As I said, these verses are,
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Yes, please.
We always do the blame game. We
Yeah.
are so cunning. Actually, we don't look at ourselves with reality. Isn't it, sir?
We are experts in this game only.
Yeah,
This is the only game. All of us are experts.
our experts.
So
And
if
we are
we-
stuck. Yeah,
If we compete with each other, all of us will be number one only.
yeah.
There won't be any number two, number three, and all that. Gold medalist, silver medalist, bronze medalist. No, there will be the gold medals will be insufficient. We are all experts at this game. But do we see that? Do we
Yes.
see that? That is the point. If we see that, then things are bound to change. That very perception brings about clarity, and that very perception brings about the transformation.
Yes, sir. Yeah.
That's not happening. The fact that it's not happening is an indicator that things are as they are and they are not changing at all.
So, sir, here the word for a realized individual or a personality, that means the world has to disappear. The world of objects.
Sir, Meena Nirulaji, again, we are getting caught in words. Where will the world disappear to? The world will not disappear anywhere. The world will be here and will continue to be here. The only thing that needs to disappear is that the strong sense of identity which is created by thought. A strong sense of me and I, which is created by thought, that has to disappear. That has to completely dissolve. Yes, Janaki Ramji.
No.
Yes, sir.
In a lighter vein,
Ah,
today in the internet age, I went to Google and put Ocean of Delusion. There is a book by that name, Ocean of Delusion, a young girl's problem with bereavement and the psychosis.
yeah.
Actually, I think Janki Ram, it should be an encyclopedia. Ocean of Delusion is such a huge thing.
So, mere washing is not sufficient.
But that term really signifies how much you have
Yeah.
to overcome. That is sufficient.
Yes. Yeah. Again, the idea is of purification, sir, of becoming transparent, of becoming like a crystal. Inside and outside, are we one and the same? That is the point. That's what a crystal signifies. That's what is called as a sphatika. A true crystal is that. It's totally transparent and it assumes any color that impinges on it. So you see, all these illustrations, examples, allegories, and statements are beautiful in themselves, but the core seems to be somewhere missing. We are missing on the core of it. The core of it, somewhere we are unable to touch it because we do not want to let go what we have acquired over a long period of time and what we identify ourselves as me, as a separate entity. When Ramchandranji was mentioning that everybody is firing at me at point blank range, that is the biggest delusion which Ramana Maharshi has repeatedly said. Where is the other, sir? You are firing at yourself. Yes, sir. Manjula ji?
No, sir. I
Yeah.
also like that other one, killing the passion and aversion.
Yeah.
Even that part is like crossing the ocean of delusion, killing the passion and aversion. So difficult it is.
No, it is not difficult. It is difficult because we have closed our eyes. Point is opening the eyes so difficult, sir, madam? Early morning we wake up and we open our eyes. Do we make a great effort to open our eyes? No. So here also the same thing. Sarangi ji wanted to say something. Yes, sir.
This raga and dvesa, I found out some way of getting over it. In the sense, when we are getting into the state of raga and dvesa, try to mentally keep yourself out of it. Difficult, but it may be possible. If it is not possible, physically separate from the situation. go to a place where you can forget about this raga and dvesha and imagine and keep in your experience the trigger points which is creating such things and try to kill these triggers when they start coming up.
I fully understand and appreciate the effort being made or the what you are trying to follow. But my humble submission again is you are not addressing the core issue. The core issue is that once you have seen the truth of these things, they should not arise in you and me again. See, like fever is a symptom of infection, right? If there is an infection in the body, it will manifest in the form of a rise of temperature of the body. Now, there are medicines to suppress fever. You take some paracetamol or crocin or what they call in US as Tylenol or whatever it is. Yeah, this fever will disappear within 15-20 minutes or half an hour. You feel that there is no fever in you. But after 4 hours, it occurs again, and they say every 4 hours you repeat this dose. Here, what is it that you are addressing? You are addressing the manifestation of that root cause, which is infection. You are not treating the infection. You are treating the symptom of that manifestation of that infection in the form of superficial fever. This is what I am trying to mention very clearly to you. So, yeah, so what happens in all these cases is you and I are only looking at palliatives, looking at temporary means to somehow overcome them. But they are not going to help you. They are not going to help us in any manner whatsoever. Unless you address the root, unless you see the nature of this desire, nature of this passion, nature of this emotion or feeling arising in you, unless you see that very clearly. Seeing is, I'm not talking about merely seeing something. It is seeing with that clarity, very nature of it and the consequences of it, completely. See, very interestingly, a very close associate of Jiddu Krishnamurti, I had met him and he was talking to me. And in some conversation with Krishnamurti, a question was posed. Suppose you have some long-standing habit. How much time do you require to get rid of that habit? The same thing was posed to Krishnaji also. Then Krishnaji said, maybe it will take 3 to 5 days. Then everybody was surprised, shocked. Right? Krishnaji always talks about instant dropping and instant seeing and something happening instantaneously. Then they questioned him. Sir, you have been talking all your life about instantaneously dropping and all that, but now you are saying it will take 3 to 5 days. Then Krishnamurti said the actual dropping happens instantaneously. But unless I am able to see every aspect of it, every dimension of it, and every nuance of that habit, and see it with all that attention and intensity and that seriousness, unless I examine that completely, that dropping will not happen. And that examination takes 3 to 5 days for me, is what he said. So if it can take 3 to 5 days for a person like Jiddu Krishnamurti, it may take 3 to 5 lives for me. That's the only difference between him and me. Otherwise, we are same. That's the problem. I do not bring that intensity, that total attention to look at every possible dimension of that to overcome it. Overcome in the sense to drop it. When you are done with that seeing completely, totally, with the great energy that you bring into it, then the dropping happens instantaneously. That's what I'm trying to say. All these palliatives, these minor cosmetic changes and superficial methods and all have all been tried, sir. Tried and tested and proved to be a great failure. Am I clear, sir? Sarangi ji, do you agree with what I said? In the sense, agree in the sense, am I able to convey what I am trying to say?
Yes, sir. But I feel all these things will come from your experience. What
Sir, where it comes from, sir, where it comes from, how it comes from is of no consequence, sir. As long as it comes and with all seriousness.
You know, as we are going with this life, Raga and Dvesha, it is very difficult to get rid of these two till we die. After death, it is not there.
So you have already come to a conclusion that you can't. No, you have already come to a conclusion.
I'm not. No, it is difficult. Conclusion is difficult.
No, you
Otherwise,
also
there is no need for time.
Sir, if I have heard you rightly, you also said till we die.
Yes, it will be difficult.
Why do you say that?
No.
Why do you say?
The point is, the point is till we die, Raga and Dvesha, in some stage it will be there. It may be nil, it may be something.
Why?
That sort of.
Why should it be there?
Nil.
No, why should it be there?
It is the mind which is playing the trick.
No, who said that it will be?
It is the mind which is playing the trick.
So you are not addressing the mind.
To control. We are not in a position to control the mind. And how
but
to
you are coming to that
mind?
Conclusion. No, sir, you are coming to that conclusion. There is nothing to control. There is nothing to bring or
No, I'm not. Mind has to be controlled. There is no other way.
You see, mind is you, sir. You are the mind.
Yes.
Are we anything beyond the mind?
How to control the mind? That is what is the point actually. Some tricks are required.
Why are you talking about control? Control is a violent action.
The point is, in that case, don't face anything.
Perception, sir.
No.
I am using the term clarity of perception.
At times, actually, we are supposed to take some risk. Why taking a risk? You can have a smooth life without taking the risk. Who is asking me to take a risk?
Nobody is asking you to take a risk.
That is what is the point. In certain circumstances, we are supposed to be put in which we put in that particular situation where Raga and Dvesha comes and grasp us.
Sir,
this is what is the point. Not it is all the time. It is happening once in a blue moon in some cases. In some places, actually, it is there on a regular basis. If a chap is having a psychiatric problem, he may be having all the time.
Then it means that it is not eliminated totally.
It is not easy to eliminate totally. That is what is the point. And we
that
have to find out.
That's sir, please allow me to say this. That's the conclusion of your mind. The statement that it is not easy, it is very difficult is a state.
This is what is actually after looking into everybody, what is happening. Looking at me, somebody is getting this thing.
Sir, that has no relevance, sir. That has no relevance.
It is like actually a smile.
If there are
one person.
Sir, if there are 1 billion people out there who are doing something wrong, does it mean that there is no means of doing the right thing? Why are you comparing yourself with somebody? Why are you saying that I am seeing this?
The point is, am I supposed to correct that chap from doing the wrong?
You are not supposed to correct that chap, sir. You forget about that chap. There is no chap outside there other than you.
Then there is no problem. I can correct myself.
He is my own twin brother. Everybody in this world is my own twin brother in some different forms and different aspects of it. There is nothing absolutely different from him and me. What is happening is that I am not bringing that energy to have that clarity of perception. As long as you do not bring that total attention and total energy to have that clarity of perception, this is going to persist and it's going to make you feel that it is very difficult, and it's also going to make you feel that everybody has it and therefore it can't go off and it will come in some form or the other until we are alive. This is bound to happen. All that the mind will create all these illusions. The mind will continue to create because it's comfortable in that zone. We are comfortable in our own zone. So that's what we will do. Come out of that comfort zone. Confront that truth.
No, that is what is the point. Starve the mind. Eliminate this particular issue. Starve the mind. Let the mind not get into this raga. That's it.
No, the mind is not different from you. You are assuming that the mind is something separate from you. One part of the mind is saying to the other part of the mind that this should not come in or I should not allow.
Yes,
that is
there
the
is something
premise
called
of questioning.
That is what is called viveka.
Whatever you may call it.
That
Sir,
actually is supposed to control the mind.
No, no, don't, please don't use the. Sir, I am opposing the word control.
Okay.
I am vehemently opposing the word control because that has been tried and tested and number of times they have it has led to only failure. Do I see the fact of it? Do I see the fact of it that it's not a question of control, but it's a question of total clarity of perception? That's all.
See, I just remembered this question. I'm sure many of you may be aware. This question was once asked Mother Sharada Devi. How to control the mind? I am finding it very difficult. She said, attach your Ishtadevata's name, chanting, to your breath.
Yeah.
Mind will come under control. So keep on chanting.
In the sense,
mantra or Ishtadevata's name with every incoming and outgoing breath. Can you practice that, Narsinga?
Sarangi ji, what Janaki Ramji is saying is that don't allow the mind to come to any conclusion. Don't allow the mind to hold on to something. You change the direction of that negative energy and focus on something positive. And the overwhelming power of that positive energy is going to divert the negative energy or diminish the impact of the negative energy. That is fine. But still, again, unless every time you keep doing this, it should not become an escape. That is my submission.
I agree, sir.
Yeah, it should
point I agree. You know,
that's all.
It is a language actually.
Yeah.
What I meant is keep the mind busy elsewhere.
Not busy elsewhere. Busy elsewhere, it will again come back to it. What I'm saying is,
putting the mind on Ishtadeva, it is actually keeping the mind busy on a higher priority thing.
Sir, there is a better way. There is a better way of paying total attention to it. See, there is a better way. That's what is suggested, that if you pay total attention to it, then it will see the consequences of it. See the miracle that happens. That's what.
Agreed. That point I agree.
14, sir.
That has also happened.
Let's close this because I have a small appointment at 11:15. So we will take it up next week. But look at it from my point of view of total attention and total perception. Okay? Okay. Who is there? Sajni ji is not there. Suman ji is there. Can you do Loka Samastha, madam?
Thank you, Krishnapal ji. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Actually.
Yeah, Suman ji.
I'm outside, sorry, I'm outside.
Oh, okay. Okay, I'll do it. Om Swasti Prajabhya Paripalayantam Nyayena Margena Mahim Mahishaha Gobrahmanebhya Shubhamastu Nityam Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu लोकाः समस्ताः सुखिनो भवन्तु। ओम शांति शांति शांतिः। ओम श्री गुरुभ्यो नमः। हरिः ओम तत्सत्। श्री कृष्णार्पणमस्तु। Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. We'll see you again with Krishna Paniji on Friday. The school programs are as usual, so please follow the WhatsApp messages on the school group. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sir Ji.